Okay. My name is Marty Rowlands. Welcome to the first reflections on the first class that I had on January 29th at 822.5 Barone Street, the offices of the architectural firm of Future Proof. We had a group of 7 students, and it went very well. I'll get into a little bit of the details and what the take-home assignment was. But we started out by doing introductions, and just to give you a general idea of who's in the class, we have a person who's taking a course at the College of Urban Public Affairs at UNO in transportation planning. She's an expert on motorless transport, let's say bikes and walking and paths of that sort. She works in City Hall. And it just so happens that the professor that she has a wife that's attending the course. I'm really pleased, and I think we got a good course in that. We've got we have a woman who's from the Gentilly area where I live, and she's going to be contributing. She had a lot of good things to say and a lot of good analysis. The owner of the Future Proof office was there, and let's see, we had somebody from the nonprofit Community Development Corporation from New Orleans East, the Vietnamese community, had somebody there, and he said that he's going to have somebody else come to the course. And I'm trying to recall the other. Oh, we have somebody from the Regional Planning Commission of the New Orleans area here. And I think I covered everybody. If I missed somebody, I apologize. But anyway, what we started going over was the idea of what is public revenue and the outlay transparency. I'm encouraging everybody at this time, if they haven't gone into the readings, please go to the www.futureproofnola.com, and under the news and then the urban governance class, you can pick up on some of the readings. But the public revenue outlay transparency is a concept that you can organize the city budget and the revenue and the outlays in such a way that you know at any one time what's going on with the way that the government's working. The idea kind of ties into the idea of having a governance system that you use in the conduct of your government, where you have priorities that the executive would identify, and then identify how much it costs to do something about the priorities, and then look at the revenues and then what you spend on accomplishing those priorities. Then every so often what you do is to revisit periodically, every 3 months, every 6 months, and assess how well you're doing with that plan. And people are getting more familiar with how to divide up the revenue streams and how to identify the capital budget as opposed to the current services budget. And we talked about this nonsensical idea that's been in vogue for the last 12 years or so, about how you benefit somehow by cutting taxes. You always have to ask yourself, if you're going to cut taxes, what current services are you going to cut down? And it seems as though that there's a dominant party, or once a dominant party, that says cutting taxes is always good. If that's true, then maybe we should have 0 taxes and everything grinds to a halt. So there's some point that you have to have a level of taxation, revenue generation, and we all agree on it. It goes from public safety to fire protection, the schools, and all these other things that represent public wealth. So we got into that idea. We spent a lot of time on the hope crisis continuum idea that I put forward, and if you will recall, if you want to pull up the paper while I'm talking, what you'll see is these lines within a diagram, a continuum of hope and crisis, where going to the left you have a lot of hope, and as you move to the right, the hope declines. Crisis, on the other hand, rises to a certain point and then collapses, where it's non-sustainable, whatever system you're into. And the idea that what we try to do is not deny reality and keep toward the left side of the continuum in having a lot of hope. We lose a lot of value, we lose a lot of capital and public wealth as we slip toward the right, where we deny reality and just kind of lose track of what we're doing in our conduct of the government. A question came up while we were talking about that was, where were we at when the levees failed in New Orleans? And I said, well, we're probably just to the left of that collapse function of the crisis. We didn't know that the levees were going to fail, but in reality, we were living on that teetering point, and that's a good way to understand that hope crisis continuum. Because if we would have done the homework, if the engineers had been truthful about the safety factors and the quality of the geotechnical borings and the quality of the installation, we would have had a more hopeful idea of whether the levees were going to be safe during the flooding and during the hurricane. Now, one of the interesting things before we go at the end of this little segment, the first reflections on the class, was we decided that we were going to take the New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, which is NORA, and use that as a class project, let's say. Let me back up a little bit, because each student is taking on an entire city, or they might be taking on a specific agency in the city, and they're going to run through this analysis called the Public Revenue Outlay Transparency System. And so with each student picking these ideas, what I thought was I'd use NORA. Each week we find out something new about NORA and we plot it up on the chart board. What I'm hoping that we come back is somebody says, hey, I found out one thing about NORA and I found out where the revenue comes from. Okay, and so we'll plot that out on the left side of the Public Revenue Outlay Transparency. Then somebody else says, well, I know where they spend their money, maybe $50 lunches or something. I don't know what we're going to find out, but the idea is that any public agency should be transparent. People in my class or anybody should be able to pick up the phone and say, I'm attending Dr. Rowlands' class on sustainable urban governance, and I'm interested in how NORA works. And rather than being put off or hung up on, somebody should say, well, I'm glad that you called. You know, the NORA is a publicly open, and we're glad to tell you everything we know about our operation. So it's going to be curious to see what happens when we start this activity. But I'd say by, I think, March, April, we should have a pretty good idea of how to show that either NORA is fully transparent and accountable and measurable, or it's not, or some kind of in between. And this will help others in their class assignment. I will have to say that we have one student who's very ambitious, and being ambitious means that she's going to take on the whole city of Vancouver, British Columbia, and run it through my analysis, which I'm really kind of pleased that she's going to be doing that. But anyway, that's my reflections on the first class, and hope to see you next time.